St Andrews, and what have I just read with Michael, with Malcolm,
And with the jingle. And we're very complimentary colours. We've got orange and blue, which is perfect.
very sort of something like that.
Orange makes blue blue, and blue makes orange orange. Yeah. So anyway, there we go. Perfect. 1 Kings 21, Jezebel and...
what a story!
That's a famous story, isn't it? It's one of the big
It's a big story, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's sort of... I mean, it's just so... I mean, you can't sort of feel... You know, you want to say to this man, get up and get a grip, really.
Just get a sense of proportion, yeah.
You know, first of all, you know, you want the vineyard, you can't have it. Well, be a man, you can't have it.
Just move on.
Move on. Secondly, okay, you really, really want it. You're the king, as Jezebel says. You do it. You just tell Naboth, give it to me.
But also there's interesting the whole fact that it's an ancestral, it's not just a piece of land, which like, as you say, like just get over it. It's an ancestral piece of land, which actually means it's kind of deeply significant. It sort of means like you doubly have to get over it.
And in the Old Testament, this is the very idea that land was given to certain tribes.
Right.
And so, I mean, at the end of the sort of the 50-year jubilee, if land had been bought and sold, it was returned to its previous owner, so that sort of land belonged to God and was distributed out.
So there's not much business for real estate agents in Israel.
Well, there were in the 50 years. Quite people could make money out of that.
Leasing, you know. I guess. Right.
Yeah. Yes, it was exactly.
Right. Interesting.
But
also the thing that's really interesting is this sort of the evil. What I think is so interesting is all these different levels of evil here, because it's not just he has them, it's sort of a bad idea, and then people go, oh come on now, get over it, we'll go on holiday or find some other piece of land. It's all these people become sort of complicit. So you have sort of Naboth,
Naboth. Naboth is his vineyard.
So Naboth,
you have Jezebel,
Ahab.
Obviously.
Yes.
You have Jezebel, who is a
evil as well. Yeah.
Nasty piece of work.
I mean, Ahab is sort of evil and weak, and she's kind of evil and strong.
Exactly.
And then you've got all the elders who are just evil and complicit.
Well, they're just complicit. They're just fearful.
But they all sort of work together. At no point they're not going to stop a minute, hang on, take a step back and reflect. It's interesting that. And then at the end, it was very interesting the fact that he is...
Elijah confronts him.
Yeah, but then he has this judgment on him that he's going to die and he's beaten by the dogs. But then, actually, because he repents a bit and has humbled himself, God says, I will not bring disaster in your days.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. It almost seems that Ahab, having lived this terrible... this life, now at the end suddenly gets it, and he returns, repents, and there is some mercy shown to him.
So does it mean he will not bring disaster in his days, but in his son's days? Does that mean actually he will...
he lives out his
life?
Yeah.
So he won't end up being eaten by dogs?
Well, no, he does get... His blood does get licked out by the dogs.
Okay. So
I mean, these two things do come true, but perhaps they're postponed.
Right.
So, yeah.
Interesting. And then the Acts is interesting.
This is Acts chapter 21.
Verse 37. So just before that, hasn't there been a riot or something? And hasn't Paul been taken away by the Roman garrison?
Exactly. He's caused a riot. Well, he hasn't actually. On this occasion, Paul hasn't. Paul's been quite innocent.
Right.
And there's been a riot, and the Romans, he's about to be lynched. The Romans send the soldiers to rescue him and basically save him. But... when he then starts to speak in Greek and...
what is the significance of speaking in Greek? It means that because he's a Roman citizen, right? So he knows Latin, right? So he speaks to the Romans in Latin, but then they're like, oh, so you can speak with the crowd? Yes.
But, well, no, he says something... He says, may I speak to the commander, but he says that obviously in Latin or in Greek.
Right.
At which point they suddenly realise this is an educated man.
Okay, right.
And so he says yes. And then he tells the whole story.
It's amazing, yeah.
This is the third retelling. He's sort of, it's a story of how his conversion, of how he...
And it's very interesting when he says, I could not see because of the brightness of that light. It doesn't say I was blinded, which I think is really interesting. It's like everything went dark. It's like there was so much light he couldn't see because of the light, which I thought was really interesting rather than, just everything going dark. an interesting way of being. In fact, the word blinded isn't even used there.
No, yes.
It's interesting.
And then Ananias, then again the story of Ananias coming, and then he finishes with those lines: "Go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles." And if you've been reading through Acts, you probably know what happens, how the crowd reacts to that line. But we'll see that tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll see that tomorrow.
It's interesting. And it's very interesting. And it's very sort of graphic. This idea that he's saying, look, when Jesus meets him, and then they have this conversation, and Paul says, Lord, they themselves know that never say, I imprisoned and beat those. And he said, even while the blood of your witness Stephen was shed. And I love the idea that I was standing there holding everyone's coats. I love this sort of little detail, sort of banal, trivial detail of how he was so kind of in and complicit in that persecution.
Yeah.
Interesting. Amazing.
Great. Have a wonderful day.
And a great week.
And
a nice time in Palos, which is a very beautiful town on the river.
River Volga, isn't
Volga,
it?
that's what I'm trying to remember.
I hope it is.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's a very sort of special place.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And,
Great.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Great.